Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishne Swadhamo Bhagate Dharmajnanadiphisaha Kalau Nashtratrashamesha Puranarko Dhunoditaha Om Ajnanatimaranthasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vancha Kalpadarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This is Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 7, and we will begin with text number 43. Madgavirapi Gopala Sri Kuryat Kripaya Yadi Tadaiva Asam Bhayah Pitwa Hrishe Yustat Priyajanaham. This is very deep section of the Bhagavatam, very difficult to penetrate. Anything to do with Dharma is always very difficult. And here we have a disagreement about Dharma. That's usual. In Sanskrit language, the single most voluminous body of writing that exists is the Dharma Shastra. And that's because the Dharma Shastra attempts to codify all conceivable times, places, and circumstances, what should be done and what should not be done. It's very, very difficult to do that. Anyway, we see the circumstances. We will hear tonight what Krishna and his associates are discussing. Here it begins. Uvacha sahantyasya bandhananayanam sati muchyata mesha brahmano nitaram guruhu. What character Draupadi exhibits when she says this? She could not tolerate Ashwatthama's being bound by ropes, and being a devoted lady, she said, release him, for he's a Brahmin, our spiritual master. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. As soon as Ashwatthama was brought before Draupadi, she thought it intolerable that a Brahmana should be arrested like a culprit and brought before her in that condition, especially when the Brahmana happened to be the teacher's son. Of course, he didn't just happen to be the teacher's son, he also happened to be the killer of her sons. But Draupadi's character was so high that she didn't even consider that. Arjun, Srila Prabhupada continues, arrested Ashwatthama knowing perfectly well that he was the son of Dronacharya. Krishna also knew him to be so. But both of them condemned the murderer without consideration of his being the son of a Brahmana. Now, back in the same chapter, text 16, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur had quoted a very nice verse from Vashishta Smriti, chapter 3, text 19. Agnido Garadascheva Shastrapanir Dhanapaha Kshetra Darapaharicha Sharete Adatainaha. This is a definition of the 6 kinds of aggressors. There are 6 aggressors: the arsonist, the poisoner, the holder of weapons, someone who steals wealth, someone who steals property, and someone who steals another's wife. These 6 persons, it is allowed in Dharma Shastra. They can be killed, but we have to consider, of course, time, place, and circumstance. In the United States of America, you would have to kill everyone because everyone does these things. Really, it's true. Anyway, so this is from Vishishta Smriti, quoted by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Srila Prabhupada now continues, according to revealed scriptures, a teacher or a spiritual master is liable to be rejected if he proves himself unworthy of the position of a guru or a spiritual master. This is another interesting point because, according to Dharma Shastras, again, a Brahmana cannot be killed and he cannot even be punished. And yet, both Krishna and Arjuna are encouraging this right now. So how do we explain this? It will be explained, but we'll move on with Srila Prabhupada's purport. He then says, a guru is called also an acharya, or a person who has personally assimilated all the essence of the Shastras and has helped his disciples to adopt the ways. Now here Prabhupada is quoting from Vayu Purana, and Vayu Purana says, achinoti tu shastrartham achare sthapyati api. Swayam acharate yasmad acharyas tena kirtitaha. This is another definition. This is the definition of the acharya. An acharya is one who fully understands the conclusions of the revealed scriptures and whose behavior reflects his deep realization. He is a living example, for he teaches the meaning of the scriptures by both word and deed. Very nice description from Vayu Purana. We should memorize that verse. It's also given by our Paramaguru, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in his compendium, which is called Gaudiya Kantahar, necklace for the Gaudiyas. Many nice verses he gives on the conclusions of Shastra. That's one of them. Srila Prabhupada now continues his purport. Ashwatthama failed to discharge the duties of a Brahmana or teacher, and therefore he was liable to be rejected from the exalted position of a Brahmana. So we may reject someone as a Brahmana, we may reject that person as a spiritual master, but it is not within Dharma to punish the Brahmanas. Those who are really Brahmanas, of course, not pretenders. In the 10th canto, chapter 72, text number 20, we find a very, I would say, germane verse. Yo anityena sharirena satam geyam yasho dhruvam nachinoti swayam kalpaihi savachya shochya eva saha. He is indeed to be censured and pitied also, who, although able to do so, fails to achieve with his temporary body the lasting fame glorified by great saints. I'll read it again. He is indeed to be censured and pitied, who, although able to do so, fails to achieve with his temporary body the lasting fame glorified by great saints. In other words, all of us who have taken a human form, and according to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, especially those who have taken a human birth in Bharatavarsha, we have a responsibility. That responsibility is to achieve by the means of this body and mind, the lasting fame that is glorified by great saints. Srila Prabhupada said this in his final months on this planet. He said that this body will die. We will all die. Whatever we do, it will all turn to dust eventually. But one thing is fame. And Srila Prabhupada attained that. Still, half a century later, we're all glorifying his divine grace for what he did. He took his so-called material body and mind, and he used these things in Krishna's service by following the instructions of his own spiritual master. That's really what Krishna service comes down to. So, a person who, although able to do that, doesn't do so, that person is pitied. And in fact, he's criticized. Very nice verse. Again, that's Canto 10, Chapter 72, text number 20. Now, Prabhupada continues, on this consideration, both Lord Krishna, Sri Krishna, and Arjuna were right in condemning Ashwatthama. But to a good lady like Draupadi, the matter was considered not from the angle of Shastric vision, but as a matter of custom. By custom, Ashwatthama was offered the same respect as offered to his father. Who was his father? Dronacharya. It was so because generally the people accept the son of a Brahmana as a real Brahmana, by sentiment only. Factually, the matter is different. A Brahmana is accepted on the merit of qualification and not on the merit of simply being the son of a Brahmana. Now, having read this part of Srila Prabhupada's purport, we can interject. In his elsewhere, throughout his writings, in his Bhaktivedanta purports, Srila Prabhupada mentions that there are two kinds of parampara, Guru Shishya parampara. One of them is called, Shishya parampara, disciplic succession, and the other one is called Shukra parampara. That means seminal succession. Seminal succession means from father to son in the family. Even in our Gaudiya Sampradaya, we have some lines of disciplic succession like that. And there's no harm in that. It is an authorized system, but when out of sentiment, here Prabhupada says, out of sentiment only, when people think that just because a person is born, say, in a Goswami family or in any other Brahminical family, that therefore he's automatically a Brahmana, that is not good. That is what Prabhupada is dismissing here. So qualification is the real criteria, not just birth. And in fact, in the 7th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Yasya Yalakshanam Proktam, that famous verse that says this much, that it is not just by birth, but by qualities. There are two things, guna and karma. Now, of the two, which one is more important? The activities or the gunas? This is a question that I think it's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur raises. Because an unqualified person can put on the dress of a Brahmana and he can pretend that he knows what he's doing. I mean, they do this all the time, we have to admit. And they can fool people who are simple. But the activities alone are not really the final consideration, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. He says it's actually the gunas. You have to develop the gunas. Why? Because janmana jayate shudraha. Everyone by default is automatically born as a Shudra. At birth, everybody's a Shudra. It's everyone across the board. Parantu samskaratu bhave dvijaha. By following the samskaras, there are 13 or so samskaras according to different traditions. By undergoing samskaras, one becomes dvija, twice born. Initiation is one of those samskaras, diksha. Initiation means just the beginning of something. That is the meaning of initiation. Why does Prabhupada translate this word diksha as initiation? Because to indicate this. Business is not done with initiation. What happens after initiation? Veda parthat bhavet vipraha. One becomes a vipra, pandit, learned scholar, by study of the Vedas and by reciting the Vedas. Actually, there are 6 things we know. There's patan, there's yajan, dana, pratigraha. These 6 things are the only things that a Brahmana is allowed to do. He cannot maintain himself by anything outside of these 6. Now, since we're talking about Ashwatthama and his father Drona, it may be mentioned that Drona was a military instructor. Someone might think that that's a Kshatriya mode, but Srila Prabhupada has explained elsewhere that because he's teaching, that is the business of a Brahmana, Dronacharya. So anyway, Janmana jayate shutra sanskarat bhavet dvijaha veda pathat bhavet vipraha brahma janati iti brahmanaha. When a person actually understands Brahman, when he is self-realized, as in chapter 18 of Bhagavad Gita, Brahmabhuta Prasannatma, ityadi, then that person can be called Brahman. This is a strict definition. It's the right definition. It's the ultimate definition. That is what it means to be Brahmana. Srimad Bhagavad Gita also gives definition. Srimad Bhagavatam elaborates on that definition. Shamodamas tapas shaucham santosha kshantir arjavam madbhaktischa daya satyam brahma prakritayastvimaha. Krishna tells Uddhava. This is Canto 11, chapter 17, text 16 of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, cleanliness, satisfaction, tolerance, simple straightforwardness, devotion to me, mercy, and truthfulness are the natural qualities of the Brahmanas. These are the qualities. Remember, we were saying quality is more important than the activity. Activities also have to be there. 6 duties of the Brahmana. But the real criteria is he should have these qualities, because these qualities suggest that the person has realized Brahman. This is the point. All right. Also, we find a very nice section in Chanika Niti. That's chapter 11, texts 12 through 15, which I can read for you quickly. He says, a Brahmana is satisfied with 1 meal daily. He's always engaged in the 6 traditional duties that we've already described. And he shares intimacy with his wife only once a month on an auspicious day selected after her period. This person is called a Dvija. And he also says that Brahmana who is engrossed in worldly affairs, who raises cattle, and who is engaged in business, trade, he's actually called a Vaishya. Something to think about. That, by the way, that includes IT. IT, at least in America, if you live in Atlanta, Georgia, or more specifically Dunwoody, Georgia, then you know very well IT stands for International Telugus. You can change. Sometimes it's International Tamils as well. Anyway, so the point is that if we're not doing these 6 duties, then we may have been twice initiated, but can we be called a Brahmana? No, because the activities are not according to the Shastric definition. It makes no sense to dismiss a Brahma Bandhu born of a Goswami family on account of his not following, if we are prepared to ignore that a so-called twice initiated person is working in the IT sector or any other sector, business sector. It's all business, practically speaking, in the modern world. These are some uncomfortable truths to ponder. So he goes on to say, Chanakya Pandit, the Brahmana who deals in lac-dye articles, oil, indigo, silk, honey, ghee, liquor, or flesh, he's a Shudra. In other words, yasya lakshanam proktam, whatever the characteristics are there, that he should be called that thing. This is scientific, not sentimental. This is scientific. The Brahmana who thwarts the efforts of others, who is a hypocrite, selfish, a deceitful hater, and who, while speaking mildly, actually cherishes cruelty in his heart, he's called a cat. He's not even considered to be a human being, according to Chanakya Pandit. And then he says, the Brahmana who unhesitatingly destroys a pond, well, a tank, garden, or a temple is actually a lecha. The Brahmana who steals the property of the deity and the guru, who cohabits with another's wife and who lives among all kinds of living beings, is called a chandala. Okay, so I think we get the message here. This is, we have to actually live by what the Shastra says. And it's not just a matter of birth, but this was not Draupadi's mindset. And Srila Prabhupada does not unequivocally dismiss or discount her for that. It's very interesting purport. Let's read on. Prabhupada continues, in spite of all this, Draupadi desired that Ashwatthama be at once released. And it was all the same a good sentiment for her. This means that a devotee of the Lord can tolerate all sorts of tribulation personally, but still, such devotees are never unkind to others, even to this enemy. These are the characteristics of one who is a pure devotee of the Lord. So have we heard this before? If we've read the third canto, we certainly have. Titikshavaha karunikaha suhrida sarvadehina ajata shatravaha santa sadhava sadhubhushanam. Here's an example. And coming from Draupadi, not even a so-called sadhu or rishi or acharya, but from a queen, princess. So Srila Prabhupada says these are the Shuddha Bhakta Lakshanas. These are the symptoms of pure devotees. It's something we should think about. Pure devotees are never unkind, even to enemies. And another point here that we can gain from Prabhupada's purport is that customs and sentiment, that's a secondary consideration, actually. The primary consideration has to be Shastra. This is why I made such a point of sharing. What does the Shastra say about who is and who isn't a Brahmana? We have to go by Shastra. This is the ground rules that will ensure within human society loka sangraha. Loka sangraha means social solidarity, something Krishna mentions in chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita. So, as far as commentaries go, Sridhar Swami mentions, Nanama cho vacha cheti chakarabhyam sambramaha suchitaha. When he says cha uvacha, here it said, the word cha indicates deference, according to Sridhar Swami. She's showing respect to Ashwatthama. He continues to mention that she was intolerant about his being bound up and brought before her. She could not handle that. She didn't like to see it. Jiva Goswami is not commented here, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, likewise, the word cha with uvacha indicates that she spoke with reverence. Now, he also adds here, sati tad bandhanasahatvat iyam bhagavatad dharmikatve parikshitad arjunadapi sadhutvaditi arthaha. She's called sati, or noble, because she could not tolerate his bondage. She was thus nobler than Parikshit and Arjuna towards those who were offenders to the devotees. Very interesting. Two words here are noteworthy. Sambrama, we've heard this word if we are hearing Brahma Samhita. Lakshmi Sahasra Shata Sambrama Sevyamanam. Sambrama means many things. It means behavior that is obsequious, very, how do you say this? I mean, sushushu. And, servile, it means deference. It also means busy, eager, excited, confused even, sambrama, bewilderment, illusion, and embarrassment, all these things. The idea is that if a saint appears at your doorway, suddenly become confused and run around and try to, what do? We have to do something to receive him. This is sambrama. And the spiritual world is described like this. It's full of Lakshmis who are always running around engaged in service, very enthusiastically and in a flurry, excited in their effort to please the Lord and his devotees. This is sambrama, very nice. So this is what he says here. The word cha in this verse, Vishwanath Chakravarti tells us, it means this sambrama. How he gets that, I'm not sure. But he says that, I'm relating it. Now, another word, sati. Usually when we think of sati, we think of maybe Shiva's wife, Parvati, first incarnation, that is, before the Daksha Yajna. She was called sati. As a result of her activities of self-immolation, the sati is also considered to be those chaste women who used to actually voluntarily accept death by going into the pyre with their husbands after their husband's death. Very august character we don't see anymore, and therefore it has even been prohibited. But they used to do like this. They used to have such chastity that they could not imagine life without their husband. So sati, it means that also, but really a literal definition, sati is the feminine form of sat, just like we say sat sangha or anything sat, sadhu sangha. So what does sat mean? It means that which is real, that which is eternal, enduring. It also means good, noble, respectable. These are adjectives that Srila Prabhupada has used in this very purport in regard to Draupadi. And it means honest, faithful, pious, spiritual. All these things are implied by the word sati. Therefore, he's using it. Srila Prabhupada is paraphrasing here Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur by his, as I read it, he's using the term good lady. In several purports in this passage, Srila Prabhupada calls Draupadi a good lady. I think that that's what he's paraphrasing. Okay, so that's text 43. Time is running out. So we'll move on. Sarahasyo dhunurveda savisargopasanyamaha astar gramascha bhavata shikshito yaranugrahat. It was by Dronacharya's mercy that you learned the military art of throwing arrows and the confidential art of controlling weapons. She's talking to Arjuna now. Purport. Dhanurveda, or military science, was taught by Dronacharya with all its confidential secrets of throwing and controlling Vedic hymns. Gross military science is dependent on material weapons, but finer than that is the art of throwing the arrows saturated with Vedic hymns, which act more effectively than gross material weapons like machine guns or atomic bombs. Nowadays, we have this concept which is increasingly becoming sophisticated, smart weapons. You can get laser weapons now. The US Navy is equipping their boats with laser weapons that can incinerate the enemy from a good distance without any need of ammunition. So it's becoming a little more subtle now. I guess sometimes these things are prakarta and sometimes they're aprakarta, manifest or unmanifest. But here Prabhupada goes on to say the control is by Vedic mantras or the transcendental science of sound. Now let's think about this. Let me read that sentence again. The control is by Vedic mantras or the transcendental science of sound. Now, why is this transcendental science? We're talking about knowledge. This is knowledge of warfare. What is transcendental about that? Let's read on Srila Prabhupada's purport and see if anybody can get this. Listen carefully. It is said in Ramayana that Maharaj Dasharatha, the father of Lord Sri Ram, used to control arrows by sound only. He could pierce his target with his arrow by only hearing the sound without seeing the object. So this is a finer military science than that of the gross material military weapons used nowadays. It seems to me, I can't say with absolute certainty, we'll see what the acharyas have to say in a moment, but it seems to me that Prabhupada is emphasizing the power of Vedic sound. Vedic sound is transcendental, even when the subject matter is trigonia, which is ironic. And the art of using mantras is a transcendental art. It transcends, at least one thing that it transcends, is this gross military science that we're familiar with. It used to be bows and arrows, and then it became guns and cannons and bombs, and now it's mainly missiles and other kinds of smart weapons. All kinds of sound weapons. In fact, if you're an American diplomat in certain countries and you just get these agonizing headaches and confusion and pain, and then they're speculating that you may have been a victim of one of these smart weapons, some kind of microwave, weapon or something. They don't really know what it is, but it's transcendental to the gross science. That's how I read this. All right, not a major point. Let's move on. Arjuna was taught all this, and therefore Draupadi wished that Arjuna feel obliged to Acharya Drona for all these benefits. And in the absence of Dronacharya, because by this point Drona was already dead, his son was his representative. Here Prabhupada is representing the commentaries of the Acharyas. So he goes on to say, that was the opinion of the good lady, Draupadi. Second time he says this, good lady. It may be argued why Dronacharya, a rigid Brahmana, should be a teacher in military science, but the reply is that a Brahmin should become a teacher regardless of what his department of knowledge is. A learned Brahmin should become a teacher, a priest, and a recipient of charity. He should also become a student. He should also become a yajamana, or he should engage in sacrifice, engage others in sacrifice also. And he should give charity. These are the 6 duties. We've already described them. Okay, Prabhupada says further, a bona fide Brahmana is authorized to accept such professions. And we've already discussed that. So, Arjuna learned military science, and he learned secret mantras. And he also learned the art of throwing weapons and recalling weapons, and not just one kind of weapon, many kinds of weapons. That's clarified. I'm going to go on and we'll deal with text 45 because that is what our charges do, and then we'll look at the commentaries. Sa esha bhagavan dronaha prajarupena vartate tasyatmanorham patnyaste nanvagat virasuhu kripi. Translation is, he, Dronacharya, is certainly still existing, being represented by his son. His wife, Kripi, did not undergo sati with him because she had a son. It kind of reminds us of Madri, doesn't it? Kunti and Madri. When Pandu died, one of them had to stay to take care of the children. So that was Kunti. Madri went. Purport, the wife of Dronacharya, Kripi, is the sister of Kripacharya, a devoted wife who is, according to revealed scripture, the better half of her husband. That is a chaste wife. An unchaste wife is not the better half of her husband. But here it says A devoted wife who is, according to revealed scripture, the better half of her husband is justified in embracing voluntary death along with her husband, if she is without issue. But in the case of the wife of Dronacharya, she did not undergo such a trial because she had her son, the representative of her husband. A widow is a widow only in name if there is a son of her husband existing. It's something to think about. So in either case, Ashwatthama was the representative of Dronacharya, and therefore killing Ashwatthama would be like killing Dronacharya. That was the argument of Draupadi against the killing of Ashwatthama. Actually, we'll see, she says many more things as well, but it's very interesting. Now, on these two verses, 44 and 45, Sridhar Swami points out, Sarahasyo means Gopya Mantra Sahita. He learned this art along with the secret mantras, as we've already mentioned. Visarga means Astra Prayoga Upasanyama. That is to say, recalling these weapons that are thrown. Upasanghara, to recall them. Tabhyam Sahitostra Samuhascha. And the word samuha means a group of them. So he learned a whole bunch of weapons, not just one of them. All right. So what else do we have here? That's what he says on text 44 and text 45. He says, moreover, Kripi remains as half of Drona's body, the Atma. Why? Because she was his wife. From the Vedas we hear, Ardho va esha atmano yat patni. That is to say, the wife is virtually half of one's body. And if one asks why she was living even after her husband's death, the answer is here. Nanu agat. Bharataram. She didn't go because her husband was there in the form of the sun. That is the significance of the word virasuhu. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes a very interesting point about this. He says that by mentioning that Dronacharya taught Arjuna all these things, how to throw and withdraw, this is the important thing, the weapon, she implies that if you had not learned how to throw and withdraw the Brahmastra from his father, then how could you now bind him up and bring him here? Very insightful comment by Draupadi. Arjuna learned this from Ashwatthama's father. And if he then uses it to kill Ashwatthama's son and makes Kripi a widow in the process, what kind of gratitude is that? She's implying this. She's not saying it directly. In feminine fashion, she is indirectly hinting to her husband. So gratitude is a very important quality for advancing in spiritual life. Ekam apyaksharam yastu guroho shishyam prabodhayet prativyam nasti tad dravyam yaddadva sonrani bhavet. Chanakya Pandit also says, there's no substance on this earth, whether platinum or gold or diamonds, that having been offered to the spiritual master can release a student from his debt. To a teacher who has taught him even one letter, akshara, ekam api aksharam. If somebody teaches you that little thing, you have to respect that person. You have to respect him. That is gratitude. Very important consideration. This is something, if any of you who are initiated by Radhanath Swami, you know this already. He's constantly talking about the importance of gratitude. It is very important, especially for a disciple, to be conscious of the fact that we cannot repay what we've been given here. We can only try to act through our power of attorney. That is to say, to act as representatives of our spiritual master and to represent him. In fact, this is what we can do. All right, we should go on because we don't have much time. But the purport continues. The son is considered to be representative of the father according to the saying, Atma vai jayate putraha. One is born again as one's son. This is, I think, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport. And that is a verse which is quoted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It appears again in the 10th canto. Very famous, very much quoted verse. Atma vai jayate putraha. The son is the father. The wife is considered half of the husband according to the Shruti text. This is from Krishna Yajurveda. Ardhova esha atmano yat patni. Same idea. So she didn't follow her husband to death because she had the son. This is Krivi, mother of Ashwatthama. Text 46. Tad dharnamagnya mahabhaga bhavadbir gauravam kulam vrijinam narhati praptam pujyam vandyam abhikshnashaha. Draupadi continues. O most fortunate one who know the principles of religion, it's not good for you to cause grief to a glorious family, to glorious family members who are always respectful and worshipful. Purport, Srila Prabhupada says, a slight insult for a respectable family is sufficient to invoke grief. Krishna reminds Arjuna of this in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, texts 33 through 36. Maranadapi richyate. He tells him these are all such things are, dishonor worse than death. People will laugh at you, Arjuna, if you try to flee the battlefield. They'll think that you're just a weakling. More than a weakling, he calls him a eunuch. Nowadays, that would not be politically correct. But that's what Krishna said. In his sonnet 94, William Shakespeare, the famous English poet, likewise also said, lilies that fester smell far worse than weeds. You can understand a lily draws attention to itself by its beauty. And then if it rots, it's worse than if no one had ever noticed it. This is the point. So it is with all of us. In all of our activities, we have to try to live up to the name Bhaktivedanta, because everything that we do is taken as representing Srila Prabhupada. We need to always remember this. There's a couple of letters that I can share with you about this. Srila Prabhupada wrote to one disciple on August 25th, 1975. He says, the article on Marxism is very much appreciated. We can say all these big so-called philosophies are all simply mudhas. Perhaps I am the first to do it. That is a fact. Nobody ever challenged the scientists and this one and that one like Srila Prabhupada, as far as I've seen. Our philosophy is perfect and we cannot be defeated by anyone. So it is up to you to learn it and be able to present it nicely. Now you have everything. Respect, philosophy, money, temples, books, all these things I have given. But I am an old man and my notice is already there. Now it is up to you all how to manage it. If you cannot increase it, you should at least maintain what I've given you. You cannot accuse me that I've not given you anything. So it is a great responsibility you now have. This is an instruction Srila Prabhupada repeated in 1977. In his final years, he repeated it several times. There's another letter by Srila Prabhupada to Tushta Krishna. He told him, every student is expected to become acharya. Acharya means, we know the verse. Prabhupada is again paraphrasing the same verse that we've already quoted from Vayu Purana. He says, I have given you sannyas with a great hope that in my absence you will preach the cult throughout the world and thus become recognized by Krishna as the most sincere servant of the Lord. So I'm very pleased that you have not deviated from the principles I have taught. And thus, with power of attorney, go on preaching Krishna consciousness. That will make me very happy, as it is confirmed in the Guru Rashtakam, Yasya Prasadad, Bhagavat Prasado. ityadi. And Srila Prabhupada goes on to say, spiritual master who is accepted as representative of the Lord, you satisfy, if you please him, you satisfy Krishna immediately without any doubt. So I'm very glad. Keep trained up in this very rigidly, and then you are a bona fide guru and you can accept disciples on the same principle. And he goes on to say like this. So this is the point. All of us, we are actually gurus in training in the sense that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given the order, open order. Amar ajñai guru hai tare desh. Jare dekha tare kaha Krishna upadesh. Now Prabhupada concludes his purport. Therefore, a cultured man should always be careful in dealing with worshipful family members. Again, therefore, a cultured man should always be careful in dealing with worshipful family members. Kyonki, what is that from Taittiriya Upanishad? Atiti Devo Bhava, Matri Devo Bhava, Pitri Devo Bhava. Our parents are very worshipable. Now, this is especially what Prabhupada has said here, that we should be very careful how we deal with our family members, especially superiors. This is especially so when our friends and relatives and family members are devotees of any sort. Why do I say this? Because Putana, when she came to kill Krishna, Krishna accepted her as his mother, and he accepted her as a devotee, and he took her back to Godhead. Only because she was dressed as a devotee. Even her heart had the most sinful motive. Krishna didn't take it like that. She acted in some way as a devotee, and Krishna he only saw that thing. This is Krishna's magnanimity, an inconceivable magnanimity of the Lord. All right, so devotees. Now, conversely, from 10th Canto, Chapter 4, Text 46, another famous verse, which probably bears memorizing. Ayushriyam yashodharmam lokam ashish evacha hanti shreyansi sarvani pungso mahadatikramaha. O dear king, when a man persecutes great souls, all his benedictions of longevity, beauty, fame, religion, blessings, and promotion to higher planets will be destroyed. That's again 10th Canto, Chapter 4, text number 46. And Jiva Goswami explains this. Lokan means planets achieved by dharma, such as Swarga Loka. Ashisha means the objects, whatever you desire, by blessings, you get that desire. And you cannot fulfill your desires by any means other than blessings. Keep that in mind. Only blessings can fulfill desire. This list is successively includes items of greater excellence. How can they all be enumerated? Jiva Goswami asks. All the excellences, as either as means or as ends, they're all destroyed when we mistreat great souls. Violence to the great saints, famous for worshiping Vishnu, or even disobeying their words, destroys all these excellences, even for a person who has achieved unlimited goals. As they say in the English proverb, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. It's something we have to be very careful about. Okay, text number, well, actually we have some commentary here. Sridhar Swami says, Tasmat Gaudavam Guroho Kulam. The word here is used, Gaudavam Kulam, and he says it means Guroho Kulam. Bhavat Bhir Kartar Bhir Vrijinam Dukkham Praptum Narhati Kim Tu Pujyam Vandyam Cha. The idea is that you should not bring pain to the members of your Gurukula, Guroho Kulam. Kulam means the dynasty, you can say, successional, lineage of your spiritual masters. You should not bring pain to them. You should not bring. And for the devotees of ISKCON, those who are followers of Srila Prabhupada, obviously Sridhar Swami's words, Guroho Kulam, suggest ISKCON. ISKCON. We should not bring shame upon Srila Prabhupada or his mission. We should not bring pain to either one of them also. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur elaborates, more or less same thing. The relatives of your Guru, Gaudavam Kulam, should not attain suffering through your activities because they are also worshipable. Okay? This is another very important point. Sometimes people blaspheme. Now there's a big campaign of blasphemy going on, which you may be aware of. So we have to be very, very careful of these things. Avoid them like the plague. Avoid them. It's even worse than the Delta variant. This blasphemy is so infectious that it is so destructive. Should not become implicated in that. Certainly not indulge in that. Text 47. Marodid asya janani Gautami pati devata yathaham mritavatsartha. She says, my Lord, do not make the wife of Dronacharya cry like me. I'm aggrieved for the death of my sons. She need not cry constantly like me. The word here is used in Sanskrit, ashrumukhi, tear-faced woman. You can just picture it. Her face is completely wet with misery on account of the murder of her sons, heinous murder of her sons. Purport. Sympathetic, good lady that she was, third time, Srila Prabhupada says this. Draupadi is a good lady, Sati. Srimati Draupadi did not want to put the wife of Dronacharya in the same position of childlessness, both from the point of motherly dealings and from the respectable position held by the wife of Dronacharya. So Kripi was very respectable, Gurujana, and also just a mother. She feels this pain, and she does not want to visit that pain upon anyone else. Mritavatsa means Mritaputra, according to Sridhar Swami. Others don't say anything. Marodit should be Marodito, do not let her cry. Okay, so sympathy, Srila Prabhupada mentions. This depends on empathy, which is a great blessing for a devotee. Empathy, we'll talk about that in a moment. Text 48. Yai kopitam brahmakulam rajanyair ajitatmabhi tatkulam pradahati asu sanubandham shucharvitam. If the kingly administrative order, being unrestricted in sense control, offends the Brahmana class, Brahmana order, and enrages them, then the fire of that rage burns up the whole body of the royal family and brings grief upon them all. Very strong words. Purport. The Brahmana order of society, or the spiritually advanced caste or community, and the members of such highly elevated families were always held in great esteem by the other subordinate castes, namely the administrative kingly order, the mercantile order, and the laborers. Now, please note this. This is one sentence purport. They were always held in great esteem by the subordinate castes, because nowadays the other castes are not subordinate. We have identity politics. We have classless, so-called classless society. We despise anything that smells of social hierarchy, cannot stand that thing. This is artificial. Every society has those who have potential to be Brahmanas. Every society has those with the potential to be Kshatriyas or Vaishyas or Shudras. And it develops or doesn't develop, depending on whether the person is educated properly or not. Janmana jayate Shudra, we've already decided. Everybody starts at the same point, but because of innate qualities that are coming from last lives. Everybody grows into their own swabhava and swadharma. You cannot erase this. You can only efface this. And everywhere we see in the world where this class hierarchy, varnashram, really, society, is everywhere where there's an attempt to erase it, it just results in chaos. Okay, so past tense. It's a very notable thing here. Prabhupada describes this in the past tense. All right, Sridhar Swami says, this mentions the flaw in the opposing side, that is the side that wants to kill Ashwatthama. Tesham refers to the actions of the ruling class. What is that? Sanubandham means along with their families. Anubandha, sambandha, basically. Shucharpita means they're going to be permeated by lamentation. And what else does he say? Brahmakulam kartri pradahati. It is the Brahminical class itself that affects this. Their outrage will burn these sinful persons to ashes. This is the point. Jiva Goswami elaborates. Well, he says the same thing. Whether you mean that they're permeated by lamentation or they're completely drowned in it, it's the same thing. They're consumed by lamentation as a result of their own offenses. Very heavy words. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says the same thing, and he emphasizes sanubandham, saparivaram, along with all their families. Ashwatthama's whole family is blackened now because of his sin. And as Prabhupada many times says, a black spot on a white sheet, it's that kind of situation. So the Brahmana class itself, by their potency, if they have potency, they will affect this. Text 49, and then we're going to finish. Actually, we go up to text 51, but there are very few comments here. Sutavacha dharmyam nyayam sakarunam nirvyalikam samam mahata raja dharmasuto rajnyaha pratyanandad vachodvijaha. This is very significant verse. Sutta Goswami said, O Brahmanas, King Yudhishthira fully supported the statements of the queen, which were in accordance with the principles of religion and were justified, glorious, full of mercy and equity, and without duplicity. 6 qualifications. Purport. Maharaj Yudhishthira, who was the son of Dharmaraj or Yamaraj, fully supported the words of Queen Draupadi in asking Arjuna to release Ashwatthama. One should not tolerate the humiliation of a member of a great family. Arjuna and his family were indebted to the family of Dronacharya because of Arjuna's learning the military science from him. If ingratitude were shown to such a benevolent family, it would not at all be justified from the moral standpoint. Something to think about and apply, even in 2021. The wife of Dronacharya, who was the half body of the great soul, better half, must be treated with compassion, and she should not be put into grief because of her son's death. That is compassion. These Prabhupada is listing them. I said there are 6 qualifications. Prabhupada is going through all of them. Such statements by Draupadi are without duplicity. That's the third one, because actions should be taken with full knowledge. The feeling of equality, 4, is there because Draupadi spoke out of her personal experience. A barren woman cannot understand the grief of a mother. Draupadi was herself a mother, and therefore her calculation of the depth of Kripi's grief was quite to the point. Who is the best yogi in chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita? Generally, we're going to hear Yoginam api sarvesham mankaterantaratmana. That's text 47, but no. I'm going to disagree with that, at least here and now. Look at text 32 in chapter 6. What does Krishna say there? We were mentioning sympathy and empathy a moment ago. Krishna says, in effect, that the person who has empathy, he considers to be the best yogi. Somebody who has empathy, because you cannot have sympathy without empathy. First, you have to understand another person. As Prabhupada has pointed here, a barren woman cannot understand the pain of a mother. Empathy is very, very important for devotees. Atmaupam yena sarvatra samam pashyati yorjana sukham vari yadiva dukham. So yogi paramomataha. Paramomata. Parama means the best, supreme. So that's one point. Srila Prabhupada continues. And it was glorious, that's to say Draupadi's opinion was glorious, because she wanted to show proper respect to a great family. So let's recap this very important point. Draupadi's judgment had these 6 qualities: dharmyam, nyayam, sakarunam, nirvyalikam, samam, mahat. That means to say they were religious, they were just, they were compassionate, they were non-duplicit, they were equitable, and they were noble. 6. So, therefore the king accepted her words. Maharaj Yudhishthira was sensitive enough to appreciate the truth in what his wife was saying, because a good wife has these qualifications. She can be a minister, she can be an advisor, she can be an assistant, she can be so many things. And in this case, Draupadi was speaking very nicely. And therefore, even Krishna's mind, it would seem, was swayed. Actually, Srila Prabhupada has already explained that Krishna spoke to Arjuna and encouraged Arjuna and Bhima to kill Ashwatthama only as a test. We don't really know if Krishna actually meant it or not. But by this time, having heard Draupadi's words also, Krishna also agrees with her. And Sridhar Swami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, they both say the same thing, in effect. And that is to say that each of the 6 qualities mentioned in this verse are illustrated by all the verses that we have read tonight. In text 43, when she says, Muchitam, Muchitamiti, release him, he says, this demonstrates her quality of dharma, faithful to dharma. She asked to release him because he's a Brahmin, our guru. She was being dharmic. And her words were filled with nyayam in text 44, when she says, Shikshito yadanugraha, this person is the one who taught you the military art. And without him having taught you, you would not even be able to arrest Ashwatthama, because Ashwatthama could not withdraw his weapon, but you knew that because of what his father taught you. So nyayam, she was being very reasonable. And her words were full of karuna. Tasyatmano ardham. The wife is half the husband, better half. She was thinking of Kripi's welfare. Nirvyalikam, she was unwilling to cause pain to others. That's in text 46 when she says, Tad dharmagya, oh, you're a knower of religion. How can you be acting like this? She was being straightforward. And her words were full of samam. Samam, you can say, means calmness. You can also say it means equity. And Prabhupada says both, actually. She said, Marodasi, do not make her cry like me. She was comparing the two of them, in other words. And her harsh words at the end, in text 48, they express her mahata, her greatness, or her generosity, her desire to benefit those who were hearing. Yai kopitam brahmakulam. These angry brahmanas, they will destroy the kshatriyas. In other words, you don't have to do it. This is her implication. Now, I'm just going to finish here. The word nirvyalikam means non-duplicit. Nirvyalikam. Vyalikam itself means to be false, to be hypocritical, to be dishonest, to be strange, to be offensive, improper, painful, or fraudulent. So Draupadi was none of these things. She was straight to the point. Straight up, as they say nowadays. Text 50. Nakula Sahadevascha Yuridhano Dhananjaya Bhagavan Devaki Putro Ye Chanye Yascha Yoshitaha. Nakula and Sahadev, the younger brothers of the king, and also Satyaki, Arjuna, the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, son of Devaki, and the ladies and others all unanimously agreed with the king. So by this time, they're all on the same page. No significant purports here. Yuyodhana is the name of Satyaki. Text 51. Tatraham marashito bhimas tasya shreyan vadhat smritaha nabhartur natmanascharthe yohan suptan shishun vritha. Now, Bhima has to introduce some discord here. His mind has not changed. What does he say? Bhima, however, angrily disagreed with them and recommended killing this culprit who had murdered sleeping children for no purpose, including his own. Nabhartur natmanascharte. He did not please his guru, and he did not even please himself, because look at the mess he's in right now. Ashwatthama is wandering friendless, alone, sick, and miserable, without any sympathy, somewhere in this world, because of what he did. Okay, so Sridhar Swami says, here Tasya, his, refers to anyone like Drona, anyone like Ashwatthama. Bhima feels that simply killing him is going to be best, for otherwise he'll be pushed into hell by his sins. And he says that regarding his master, he's killed these five sleeping sons supposedly for his master, but his master was disgusted by this and rejected him for it. So it's kind of like Prabhupada says, he lost his caste and he's still hungry. I don't know if you've heard that story, but we're out of time now. It's 10 minutes over time. So maybe I should stop here, and I will ask if anyone has any questions or any comments on any of this, we can discuss.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. As always, Prabhu gives so many points we learn actually from you, which we can contemplate and we can meditate and we can practice, Prabhu. There's, I think, question from Mataji.